You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast.
Good morning, everyone. Or afternoon, or whatever time zone you're in. We're dealing in time zones here. Everyone's welcome. Welcome back to the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast. My name is Merla. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm the other host for today. My name is Dante.
Exactly. Hi, Dante.
Hi. Doing well.
Yeah.
Wait, you didn't ask how are you? You said hi.
Wait, I didn't.
You said hi. You said hi. I said I'm doing well.
You're welcome to fill it
not
in.
That
Be
you
flexible.
Know.
That's all good. It's all allowed here. Because in this podcast, we talk about so much. We talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting, and telling stories born from those settings. Welcome, everyone. We're, I don't want to say deep in, but we are on a solid start of the 6th season of Your Rivers Are Wrong.
Season, yes.
That's a lot of S sounds in one word. The 6th season.
Right, exactly.
Very impressive. I can't believe we're doing 6 seasons. I guess it's happening now. I'm very proud of us.
Yeah, and these aren't short seasons. These are 10 season episodes, each 30 to 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's usually over that. So we've logged 50-something hours of world building and storytelling in this stream, not including all the minutes we've cut out through editing.
We're doing so great, is the conclusion, I think, in my opinion.
We're in this deep.
Yeah. We're also, for the, I guess, listeners who are not catching this as it airs, quite deep into summer as well. Mm-hmm. How have you been holding up over there across the seas?
It's busy. It's busy here because I'm trying to get to your side of the seas. And that's a lot of paperwork.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, so basically I'm planning this family cruise with me and mom, dad, sister, and we're going. We're gonna do a cruise, gonna land in Italy and go through a bunch of countries and come back. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I'm heading to London and hanging out with people and you, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
Problem is, since I'm the quote unquote most experienced in traveling to Europe, as I just did it last year, I have to do all the organizing and the booking and the paperwork and the,
love that
the
for you.
little details and the printing and making sure everything's on time. And look up excursions. What's the best thing to do in every country you're visiting? And then we'll plan around that. And I'm like, okay, so I have to investigate about 4 or 5 cities. No big deal. That's
Wait,
fine.
how many countries are you passing on the way during this trip?
This is a cruise you could probably look up somewhere on the internet. We start in Italy and then we go to Croatia, then Montenegro, then to Greece, then back to Italy.
Whoa.
It's like a little bit of it's a little loop.
Little loop?
But,
got it.
Yeah, but it's all places I've never been to before and I have no idea what to do in each of these cities. So it's like I'm going to like YouTube and be like, cool thing to do in blank. And I'm just doing that 5 times.
I mean, isn't that what we all do? Like, let's not lie about this. That's the way to plan your trip. Figure out what other people do and steal it.
And I had a wonderful, I'm putting quotations on wonderful, conversation with one of my coworkers because they're like, oh, you're going on that cruise, right? To this, this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, that exact cruise. It's this, and this. And he's like, oh, my friend just did that this past week, that exact cruise. And I'm like, oh, do you have any tips? And they're like, yeah, she was stuck in the airport due to strikes. And I'm like, oh, wow. That reminds me of last year.
That's awful. Do you have any tips? Yeah, don't get stuck on an airport. That's the first thing she says.
You're like, she was trying to get home on Saturday and it's now Monday and she's just catching her plane now. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much for those warm, kind
lovely,
tips.
Unstressful comment. Yes.
That is exactly what I wanted to hear right before I go to travel. So,
keeping all the fingers crossed for you. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of those check boxes to clear off. But otherwise, really excited because it's this weekend. We're flying out and it's, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, so much to see. I'm pretty sure that's like a all-star line, but from the song. But anyway, that's what I'm busy with. How about you? What's on your end?
Amazing. I have, also, I guess, a holiday planned, which is the London trip that I'm going to do with you, which is a little bit later because you're first going to visit other countries, I guess.
Sorry, you're the last on my list.
Should I shame you for it? No, let's be nice today. So that's a bit later. And for now, I'm quite busy, I would say, with graduating.
Yes,
it's a thing I have to do, I realized. So the first deadline for that is in like 2-ish weeks. For a written thing, like a big essay sort of report assignment. That's part of that. And then the second due date is after our holidays. that I conveniently planned right in the middle of this period. Because I have all the time and options for that, apparently. And planning skills. I also have those.
So give me a second. Hold on. You have one due date right before and or during your vacation.
Yes.
And the second due date is right after the vacation.
Yes, but I have holiday of my usual work. So I have the time these coming weeks to do like boot camp, hardcore writing and finishing this project. Which I can do.
Making sure.
I am capable, I am able, and I will finish it because I have no other choice. This is the last
exactly shot. That. Okay, listen, if you need...
That's going to put me over the edge, That's all I need. Pressure.
If you need to bring you coffee in the middle of our London trip, by all means, let me know.
Yes. Oh, I will, hold you to that promise, yes.
If you're burning the night oil... on a vacation.
It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna be so ahead. I'm gonna have time to spare. I won't have anything to do in London. No.
Oh my gosh.
It'll be fine. It's gonna be great. And also I'm pretty finished, so I know what to do, which is good. Mm-hmm. It's not like a sort of impossible mountain that I don't know how big it is.
Right.
But it's a little bit of work.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit of work. Just a graduation
a
work.
Humble, tiny bit of work. Yeah.
Just the final thing you have to do for school. No big deal.
What does that even mean? Yeah. So that's the thing. So I've been spending my days in the coffee cafe that is very close to my home because somehow I can't be productive at home because
totally valid.
I guess
I get that.
My house hates me. Yeah. And there they got like pretty good freelance facilities. I don't know if that's like a purpose thing, like a purposeful decision, but they have sockets everywhere and they have like free water that you can just grab everywhere, which is pretty good.
Nice.
So yeah, that's been sort of my setup and gonna be my setup the coming week. So yeah, I'm gonna be good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good stuff.
Yeah. Final note before we jump into recording. This is the last episode, not last episode, but this is the last episode we record before I take off. So the next episode after this, if you're listening, will be live recorded with Merle.
Yeah. How exciting.
Which is going to be cool because we've only done that once before. Last time I was there, episode 30, I think. You could check that out and see if that's the right one where we hang out and record in the same room at the same time. Truly a rare occasion. And yeah, that's going to be so fun.
It's going to be so fun.
We also recorded that one like half secret episode that we never uploaded and we still have no idea what to do with. Because it's video, we never had like a video episode. So
how does that work in podcast form? No one knows.
We're just figuring out what to do with that. If anybody has any ideas on what to do with that video that we have not yet released from last year, let us know. And yeah, that's it. I'm so excited, so pumped, so stressed.
And with that, let's dive into what we're actually trying to talk about. Usually after like the first 10 minutes of the show, I guess. Which is world building and storytelling. For the uninitiated, every episode, one of us is basically the host, so brings a topic to the table. In this case, it's me, and Dante has no idea what I'm bringing, and we're going to have a chat about. And usually we also wrap up with a little prompt, either related or not related, usually related to the topic that we bring for the episode. Yeah, it feels like it's got to have a connection. So for this week, I am your humble topic chooser. And the following topic is on the table for today. I want to talk with you about the power of movement in storytelling.
The power of movement.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if we already kind of covered this topic somewhere before, but I was like, I want to talk about it again. So if we did it before, here's the extended version or the things I forgot to mention in the previous one. If we did it before, I'm not sure. Go figure it out. Anyway, I want to talk about movement. I think it's, in general, across all kinds of artistic disciplines, across all kinds of stories and media forms to tell stories in many ways, it's a sort of variable or element that you can use to propel your story or your characters or your setting forward. And I think the past week or so, I've been noticing movement in different kind of works and how different what a different kind of mechanic they all brought to the kind of story that they were in, like the example that they were in.
Sure.
So I think it's just nice to talk about some versions of this and how much variation there actually is to using movement to your advantage in the story. I think I want to start off with maybe a sort of classic one, which is the film Seven Samurai. I haven't seen it entirely, but I watched a super, super lovely video essay on it. It's quite an old school, classic movie nerd lover movie. It's a sort of samurai story, and it's by the director Akira Kurosawa, if I said that right. Yeah. And in this video essay, which is by Every Frame a Painting, a very lovely YouTube channel that does similar essays like this, they talked a lot about the influence and importance of movement in every shot of that film. So all the time you can see either people using fans to sort of cool themselves off, which is of course a very moving thing to have in a shot. He's talking about the movement of crowds of people that sort of emphasize the emotional height of a scene. So if there's lots of people involved, the tension, the stakes feel higher because everyone's looking at it, because a lot of people are suddenly sort of whirlwinded into the scene. He talks about the importance of weather or having like constant rain in the background as a sort of, well, literal grain, but also a sort of emotional metaphor that we definitely covered before in many topics, because we talk a lot about weather and storms and lightning. I don't know.
True.
Yeah, and I think the idea of movement, which is quite literally, right? Like if we go back to the beginning, like why is movement a relevant thing? It's a sort of thing that catches our attention or that captures, I guess, our eye. And to use that as a tool for directing us where to go or what to feel is a very relevant thing to talk about or to explore, I guess, in storytelling. Yeah, so let's start off there, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I can speak on the relevancy of movement in what I usually work on, which is video and video editing. And this is going to be not necessarily an emotional like bullet point, but rather a practical one. In terms of YouTube videos and their success, ignoring the first metric, which is click-through rate, the number of times people click on your video to like access it. There's a percentage of, how many people click on your video when they see it. The next metric and second most important metric, I believe, in terms of if this video gets recommended to others, is video retention. And what I find and what I've learned is that in your video, you should somehow, some way maintain constant movement. Because it's a video format, right? If you're looking at static images the entire time, then people tend to lose focus. They tend to turn their attention other places. Mr. Beast famously has like the three eye catchers, which is the person talking, the voice that you hear, and the captions at the bottom of the screen. And if all three of those are loud and eye-catching, then people stay on the video longer. It's why in the beginning of videos, you see the captions like pop out, pop, 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 like the first couple of words, because that's all with the intent of making sure people stay focused on the video. When it comes to the later half of the video, or at least, the rest of it that isn't so aggressively
attention
grabbing.
Sure.
When you gotta kind of mellow out and just take it at a normal pace, it's still important for video editors to have a background that's somewhat moving, whether it be flickering flames or like a static-y movie kind of effect, or just something that pans from left to right. You'll notice that a lot of the most successful editors always make sure that there's something in the frame that keeps the image from being static. And for me, my transition of choice is the slide. So things slide left, right, like layering of tiles and images,
right,
like slowly stacking up from left to right. And when it comes to transitioning those in and out of frame, if I want the story to go sequentially, I make things slide out to the left to imply that, right is movement, as we do with like PowerPoint presentations. Sliding up is important because sliding up is indicative of this is something we're going to address later. Sliding down is like we're done with this topic, we'll no longer talk about this. And sliding backwards means that we're revisiting a topic we talked about before. So the way that things leave the frame is very important to me in dictating, hey, this is the direction we're taking this video. Like this is where we're going next. So
it's a very systematic thing then, like quite literally as well, which I like.
Exactly. And it's a very simple effect. And also in the background of videos, when I talk about something, if I don't have a motion video to show people while I'm talking, I'll try to get a relevant picture and put it on front and center, then either pan it left to right, pan it up and down, or zoom in or zoom out. And if I zoom out, slowly pan, zoom out, so you see more and more of the picture as time goes on, it means that we're kind of expanding this topic. We're letting people get the bigger picture of what we're talking about.
Right.
But if we zoom in, then we're hyper-focusing on something either central to the background picture or central to the theme.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And if we pan left or right, I have to make sure that it follows the panning direction of what came before it, what came after it, if it's all one cohesive idea. So motion in video editing is so important because it's attention grabbing, it keeps people watching, but also it's implied story direction. And it's not things that people walk away from the video remembering, but it does help highlight your ideas in the moment. And it's very, very important if it like pans in, pans out, slides left to right. That's all very crucial to conveying whatever you're talking about, because it helps people focus on the words and gives them a visual to hook onto. So that's kind of my personal experience in my field about like the value of movement in these sort of media pieces.
Yeah.
I don't know if that connects to like what you work on or what you've witnessed in movies or TVs, but
no, that's super interesting, I think, specifically because you also have, I mean, I guess if I can call this a genre, or like your form of telling, I guess, is usually a sort of explanation or a sort of in-depth examining of a topic. Do I say that correct? Yeah, something like that. So it makes a lot of sense to also tie your movement to making people, aside from attention grabbing, which of course is a factor that exists in the digital spheres. But it makes a lot of sense to me that then also you systematically sort of use the movement to foster as much understanding as possible, kind of to not only have your voice or the structure of your argument or, you know, the words you use be that structure, but also the visual that you literally have, you know, at your service, because it's a video thing, right? It's a video essay. Right. Yeah, I think that's very nice. And also, yeah, I guess you're talking a little bit about a timeline as well, right? Like the thing that I'm graduating from now is a master in illustration. And in a previous theoretical course, I guess we talked a lot about image making and how to direct the eye of the viewer, I guess, to the points that make sense. So interestingly, this is not about like moving image, right? This is literally a still image that we're talking about. So we used to like get either a big spread from a comic or a painting or just a big illustration, magazine illustration, whatever, as a case study, and then analyze, you know, what the priorities are in the image and how you would basically read it. And the thing that I learned, I guess, or that struck me as interesting there is that usually if the image does not have a focal point or something that stands out more from other stuff, we usually regard it as if we're reading a text. So as if we're starting, at least in the Western way, right? Starting top left and then, you know, traveling across the page to the right, then moving to the next line, quote unquote line, etc. So then the first thing we would see is basically top left. However, if you want to change up that sort of default order of what I guess our eyes find most important, you have to highlight the parts that are relevant. If there's in the center of your scene, there's something, you know, think about the sort of famous Sword in the Stone kind of illustration, right? There's for a reason, there's a quite literal spot on the sword to be able to see how beautiful and mystical and mysterious it is. And if it literally was in a shadow of the side, yeah, it wouldn't be a cool illustration because no one cares about it. Your eye's not being drawn to it, right? It's super obvious, but if you talk about it in a sort of theoretical way, it makes a lot of sense how you really want to direct the eye of the viewer to the thing that you're prioritizing most. So it's really very often also a subconscious thing, I'd say. And I think the thing that reminded me of it is that also, ideally, I guess, in your way of storytelling through video essay and explanation, you don't want them, I guess, to notice the movement that much, but it has to underline or sort of emphasize whatever you're trying to say, right?
Right. There's a huge difference between a static image behind your video and a slightly slowly moving image. Again, it's not something you leave the video and be like, hey, I noticed that image was panning. Like nobody ever thinks about that.
Yeah.
But that subtle movement is the implication of a forward motion, that the story is moving forward. When the picture is static, people immediately, almost without thinking about it, try to skip ahead to see what comes next, right? But the subtle motion happening in the video tells the viewer like, hey, the editor knows what they're doing. This is going somewhere and I don't want to skip ahead and miss something, right? And I think it's so interesting what you talked about in terms of illustration, that there's a lot of media that is not dynamic in that it doesn't visually move. So the idea of implied movement is so important, like not only in illustrations where you're like leading people from one side of the image to the other, which I also recognize from like YouTube thumbnails, where it's like there's a science in having somebody in the thumbnail looking in a certain direction. And for the Western world, looking left to right is very significant. So oftentimes you'll see people positioned in a way that the eye can follow what they're looking at. But also I'm thinking like in audio editing, there is a natural that, and it's not typically used in like, at least in podcasts, it's not typically used, but like in more audiobooks, in audio dramas, they make use of the left to right feature, where you can have it sound louder in the left speaker than in the right speaker. And to have the sound slowly pan from left to right implies movement, which helps immerse you in a world that feels more 3D, feels bigger. It's, it's like the surround sound in a movie theater, where instead of all the sound coming at you from the front, they try to chuck some sounds left, chuck some sounds right to make you feel like you're surrounded by the entire image. And it's more immersive, it's more engaging. Again, avoiding this idea of static, because stories are nothing if not always in motion,
Yeah, for sure. And I would even go as far, I sort of thought about this as you were talking, even in like literal text, like in whether a text is written in a serif font or a sans serif font. In my background as studying a Bachelor of Graphic Design, we talked a bunch about fonts. So I guess I have a lot of experience about fonts. For the people that don't know, a serif font is basically the more traditional Times New Roman-esque font with like little feet on the edge of each corner. And a sans serif font is more like an Arial or a Helvetica, which is very straight and sort of, I guess less frilly about it, has less difference in weight, as you would call it, like the line thickness of each stroke. And there's a lot of talk about like what it means to have fonts either in the digital space for readability, what it means for a font to be printed, because an ink bleeds a little bit in a paper. So every time you print something, it becomes visually a teeny tiny bit different from the way that you see it in your, text processor. And specifically regarding serif fonts, which is the one with little feet, the more traditional one. Feet.
Snell keep feet.
It's kind of cute. With little feet. Those are regarded as more legible because the weight kind of has a flow to it. So if you would see, for instance, an O that is just one line thickness, and if you would see a serif font next to it that has a very thin top line of the O and a very thick kind of belly, quote unquote, of the O, your eye gets kind of pulled towards the thicker line. That's kind of how it works. It's very minuscule, of course, but if you see an entire text made up of serif letters, it sort of directs or sort of has that pull to it, whereas the default Arial or Helvetica sans serif font is very kind of what it is. You kind of have to make what you make of it yourself. There's more effort to it. I think that goes very far. I think that's a very detailed analysis of font making, but I think it's interesting nonetheless, because I do think it kind of has that same idea to it. And even if we're just talking about reading letters, right, which is such a basic thing almost, definitely in this this age of how many other kind of media and intensive immersive experience we have, that even there it kind of starts by the decisions you make on how something looks or how heavy certain parts of an image are. Yeah, so right. it can kind of go quite far in any direction, really. Yeah, and I think you make a great point at how even without movement, there can be the feeling of motion or the feeling of we're getting somewhere, because that's really also the thing of a plot line or of, in general, the feeling that you've learned something is a change, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely two sides of this movement topic that we're tackling. It's the practical side and the storytelling side. I think we both have a lot of experience in the practical side and how to best use these tools or movement or even implied movement to make sure the art or the media is conveyed correctly or with intent, I think is the word I'm looking for.
That makes sense.
And then obviously there's the movement of story where there are literary techniques to make a story progress in the direction that you'd like it to. On the topic of fonts, when you said that, it immediately neuron triggered me because the last video I made, I switched between 20 different fonts just to see what I needed for this video. And I was looking for a sketchy doodly sort of font, but there's hundreds of those.
Sure.
There's hundreds of them. And there's a balance between readability. There's a balance between what emotion it conveys. We're not talking about fonts in this pod. This is not the topic of the video, but it was just something on my mind.
I would not mind talking about fonts the entire episode, but
I don't know how it leans into world building.
Good.
I mean, listen, it kind of does, but that's
how else are you going to customize your wanted note, and burn the edges and everything? It's got to start somewhere,
But again, in the video editing sphere, subtitles is such a huge movement as of the last few years, where if you're releasing a professional video, somewhere, some way in that video, there has to be words, text, things that explain things very quickly and leave. Especially in the, I hate saying the shorts economy. It's a different sphere of YouTube where you make 1 minute videos, right? And if your video doesn't have subtitles, you're doing it wrong. There is an enormous population of people who watch these videos with no sound at all. They're watching it in like trains and public places and libraries, and they can't have that audio on. So the utility of captions has become a very important topic. And a program recently came out this year that colors in the text that you're speaking. So as you progress, the words you say like highlight in yellow and then fade to gray. And that's like a new advent where that's done automatically. So it syncs with the word you say and highlights it and it keeps moving. And that's like an evolution of the typical just pop the whole sentence onto the screen and then wipe it, pop, wipe, pop, wipe.
Yeah.
It's much easier for readers of the video to follow the motion of the words and keep up with the story. So it's all accessibility. It's how fast can a person perceive this motion and keep up with the story before it's too fast. And there's a too fast, too slow. There's a whole science behind it.
Yeah, I remember thinking about this when I watched, I think it was either like the last Hunger Games movie or like it was quite a while ago, but I got for like a good like 4 minutes or so, I got super distracted because I realized that for the first time ever, when I saw a movie, that was the first time I ever saw it, they changed the placing of the subtitles to it was a sort of dialogue scene, and then so you would cut to one person in focus and then over the shoulder shot of the other, and then cut to the other on the right side of the screen, cut to the one on the left, etc.
Right.
And then the subtitles, which I never saw before in my life, and it shocked me. The subtitles moved with the person that was speaking. So if we saw like the person on the left speaking, the subtitles were not centered like usually, but they were. Yeah, I'm doing the movement with my hand, but you guys can't see that. The subtitles weren't centered, but they were basically centered on the face of the person on the bottom of the screen. So you didn't have to sort of travel unnecessary long distances with your eye kind of to watch the face and to watch the subtitles. And I was like, why did no one think of this before? This is amazing. And I remember that I was so shocked by the super simple decision of someone moving the subtitles a little bit with the dialogue and how natural that felt and how logical, and how ever since I hate seeing regular subtitles because I think it can be so much better. It was very satisfying. Yeah.
There's a lot of editing science that comes into what is the best way to convey this information that the watcher does not get lost or confused.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, especially with subtitles, it's moving the subtitles up from the bottom of the screen higher to the point that it's almost blocking the video so that people can look at it and still look at the actor, still look at the person talking and not be entirely lost in the situation.
Yeah. And I think this is also, I mean, I guess we're a bit off topic, but it's fine because this is interesting nonetheless. But it reminds me a lot of the classic, I guess, saying of editing being truly great if it's not visible, right? So if you don't notice it at all, then you hit the sweet spot because then you're immersed. And that's all you want with editing. You want people to sort of get drawn into and to feel what you're trying to convey, right? So the same thing here, like, or with the, the whole writer's strike thing that's happening in America, that kind of reminded me a little bit of this, of like how writing is such an underappreciated thing because you can't really see it. There's not like a face to it because there's characters and actors and directors that are all way more famous than the writers. But if you don't have writers, you don't have a story. It literally falls. There's nothing to base anything else on, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like if something goes noticed, it's either super crazy groundbreaking or very different from the genre, or it's bad. That's kind of the difference. And if it's perfectly on that sweet spot where you really are with the movie and not with how it's made and how many money there's been thrown at or how famous the actor is, blah 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 blah, then you did it right, because then you forget that you're seeing something that doesn't exist. You're being literally right there with them. And I think the same thing happens with stuff like this, with subtitles, with motion, specifically in the style that you're well known in, the explanatory kind of presentable style, I guess. If you do it right, I hope I don't see it, but I feel like I've watched a great video essay about whatever it is about, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's yeah. I think that counts for a lot of media, but for this one, yeah, definitely a great example of that.
I have to ask, because we have strayed a bit off topic, and I do want to make sure that people clicking into watching, listening to movement actually get the movement part.
Yeah, then we talk about subtitles for half an hour. It's okay.
It's okay.
This is how it goes,
When you wanted to bring up the topic of movement, did you mean it in like a storytelling fashion or like from an art form? Because I know we're both in the field of like artistic design and making sure things look good, and
Sure.
motion is very heavy in that. But was that is that the intent of the topic? Because I know we just kind of went into our specialties, and that's not a bad thing.
I think that's totally fine. I was just interested in it the past like week or two because I've been noticing all kinds of variable versions of it, including the ones we've been talking about now mostly, but also I'll just go through these very short because I think it's just nice to mention. For instance, there was this one scene in Pocahontas, which is one of my favorite Disney movies for a long time because of nostalgia. It's not a great movie, but it's just great because I just think it's great and I've watched it for forever. There's this one pretty striking scene where Pocahontas meets the very Western, ignorant, blonde-haired, strong-muscled John Smith for the first time in her basically natural country, in the place that John Smith is exploring with his crew. And it's a scene with a very roaring waterfall and a sort of lake or pond that's right in front of it. And you see the way that Pocahontas moves her body, the way she is still in the sort of environment that the waterfall is. It's a lot of like white noise kind of that's happening as the sound. I don't think there's a lot of music as well. So it's a very strangely minimal scene almost, which is a very cool choice, I think. And on the contrary, you see that John Smith, the sort of the main guy, the main love interest and main character of the story, is very clunky in this very peaceful, tranquil, mystical environment. And he almost slips off the stones and he almost falls in the water and he tries to see Pocahontas, but she's very obviously trained in being unseen, etc. And there's nothing else happening in the scene. They don't talk. They can't even hear each other because they don't speak the same language. And this waterfall's just roaring. There's not a lot of like other people around. There's not like a time clock there's nothing to beat here. It's only sort of the meeting of these two people, and the movement of the different characters tells us about them and about their strange meetup because they are so different. Right. And I thought that was very fascinating. But for instance, I've also wrote down something that I read in a children's book series, which is, I looked this one up, in English, Ranger's Apprentice. And in Dutch, it's called The Grey Hunter, which I think is way cooler.
That's way cooler.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's a little bit of a orphan boy gets to become part of the cool secret service hunter people of the kingdom. That's kind of the premise of it. And in the first scene, we see why he's sort of a natural at it, because he tries to steal, I think, some cookies or something from a window up top in the kitchen at his orphanage or something, I think. And there's this specific description where he says, this is kind of a scene at dusk, and it's in a sort of courtyard with 2 or 3 trees around, and there's guards doing their rounds, so he has to be sort of sneaking around a little bit. And then at some point, he is described as trying to move his body with the flow of the tree branches and the way the shadow of the tree moves on the ground so that he can sort of flow with it, quote unquote, and in that way sort of traverse the open space that he needs to traverse. And if he wouldn't use the movement to his advantage, he would sort of stand out, right? So if you're, I guess, blending in like that quite literally, it gives you a sudden device of a very cool sort of espionage sneak-in scene, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I wrote all kinds of stuff down, including the Seven Samurai one, but I think it's just because it's so variable and widespread, and we had a whole different discussion that I didn't even think about, the sort of practical way that movement should be sort of underlying whatever you're trying to tell. Yeah. And I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on that topic, the way a character moves is heavily indicative of their personality. A recent example of Into the Spider-Verse, you see all these different Spider-Men and they all move differently depending on how they were trained, their body structure, their cultural influences. Like the 5 main spiders, actually there's like 6, but the 5 of the stories, they all move very, very differently. And they're all like web slingers, technically. And
they're literally all Spider-Man, yes.
Yeah, so in theory, they should all move kind of the same, but they don't. They all are very different in their movements because of the way they came up. And it's just another way of expressing themselves in terms of movement. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I got on that.
I think we did a pretty good job here. I always like it when I get surprised about where we end up. So I think this is a good thing.
Yeah. Right.
I think we did pretty well. Yeah. Anyway, as I said before, usually, including today, we wrap this stuff up to improv a little bit, to get it out of our system, so to say. And today, I am the one bringing the topic and bringing the prompt. So, Dante, are you ready for flexing your improv muscles a little bit here?
I will try my best.
Amazing. That's all I want. That's all I want here.
That's all I can give.
Yeah. Okay, today we're talking about movement. I want you to describe for me, a little bit inspired on, I guess, a lot of the things we talked about before. I want you to describe, or I guess build me a character introduction. So we get to know them for the first time. The first scene of a character fully based on a specific move. We get to know them by their signature way of blank.
Huh.
And it's up to you if you want to go like the ultra like typical, haha, he has a silly walk. Or if you want to like delve into this deep and try to figure out a sort of complicated storytelling version of that.
No,
I like either.
I got a pretty simple story.
Okay,
I think,
okay.
Yeah. Let's keep
Bring it on.
Yeah. Let's open up the scene with. Oh, I could do a little bit of post editing on this if I want to.
You could.
We open up with trumpets blaring. We'll workshop that. that's not the opening, but it could be.
No, I love it. Please, please keep
it. Sounds much better than that. You hear a crowd roaring. An announcer goes on the mic and says, "Coming up to the stage, a newcomer to the scene. We're very excited to welcome the newest representative of the Baltlands." That's not a real place, right? I'm not going to offend anybody if they come up with the Baltlands. Yeah, sure.
Nah.
Newest representative of the Baltlands. We welcome. Give me a letter. I need a letter for this name. Quick. Come on.
P.
P. Oh my gosh, we've done P before. I'm thinking the first thing that came to mind. Yeah, another letter.
T.
T. Oh, I don't want to name him Timmy. Give me. Let me think. I don't want to name him Timmy.
You put it in the universe now.
Something else. Titus. Titus is a cool name.
Titus. Okay.
Titus.
That's an improvement on Timmy for sure. Keep going.
Wait, there's definitely a Timmy out there who's listening, and it's like,
he's like, oh,
my heart.
No, Timmy, you're valid, dude. We love you.
Yeah. Listen, this story's not about you. It's about Titus.
Yeah, that's gonna heal his heart.
Okay.
Keep it up.
The newest representative of the Baltlands. Welcome Titus to the Hill of Doom. And you hear, yeah. Woo! At the top of this snow-capped peak, you could see a young guy, barely like 19, 20-ish, dressed in his snow gear. He's got a long board attached that he brings to him to the top of this hill.
That's cool.
And he seems nervous, right? But the crowd is roaring. You can see in the far corner his family cheering him on. Mom, dad, sister, just like yelling at the top of their lungs. And he like takes a deep breath and slides off of the starting point down this hill. And he's zooming in and he's wow, I don't know snowboarding terms, but it's fine. I truly have no idea.
It's improv. You can do whatever you want.
He's shredding.
Yeah, he is. He's shredding so hard, dude.
Oh my gosh, shredding like wow. Okay, I'm so good at this. We're professionals.
So convincing. You're so great.
And then he reaches the first ramp on this hill, and as practice, he curves onto it, launches himself off. And this is the first indication that this is a story set in the far future. The jet engine on the back of his snowboard roars
which is
to
there.
life.
That's okay.
And he spins himself a couple of times. Pretty standard trick at this level of competition. But you can see him do this special twirl, and people are like, "Ooh, he did it! Wow, he's so young, he's so professional," you know. And he sticks it, and everybody cheers. And it's like, oh, the kid from the Baltlands has more up his sleeve. Let's see what he's got for ramp 2 and 3. He kicks over to ramp 2. Quick turn of the board, and he begins propelling like sideways, and it's like this special thing that looks super cool as the flames of the jet engine like make wisps of smoke, almost tracing a pattern in the air as he spins to a landing. And the crowd roars again, but everybody's waiting for ramp number 3, which is when every pro jetboarder does their cool pro jetboarder move, right? And he's riding down, and as he's approaching, obviously, and on the topic of movement, you're going to see everything around him slow as it kind of goes into this this time stop sort of scenario. He sees the crowd around him grind to a halt as the small particles of snow just go ever so softly past his face. And he immediately flashback. All of these memories of him practicing this technique at home, all of the times he's failed. You could see him having an argument with his coach, then the coach says, "This move will never work. You could die, Titus. You could die doing this move." And Titus is like, "I want to change the game, coach. I want to be the difference." And the coach is like, "You'll never be able to do that. You're gonna die reaching for something you could never climb for." And he's like, "Watch me." And he throws his gear on the floor, and there's like a time skip. Years later, he's still just like just barely a teen. He's got a new coach, new facility, and he's really just grinding it out and trying this over and over again. And a year before the competition, he breaks his leg attempting this technique. And there's like the whole hospital scene. New coach says, "I can't believe you did that. You never showed me that you would attempt that. We didn't go through that in any of the runs. What are you doing? You're really risking everything here." And Titus is like crying on the bed. Again, this is all in time stop mode.
Yeah, flashing by.
The snow is slowly picking up in speed as it goes by his face, as he realizes he does not have much time left to really ponder on this. But he grits his teeth and almost like grabs the memory in his metaphysical hand and then rips it away from his front view. As he jettisons back to he jettisons back to full speed, kicks off the ramp, like pumps 2 bursts of the jet engine and flies upwards. And you see him flies almost vertically upwards instead of progressing forward. And then he like curls to the right. And the announcer says, "Look at Titus go. He's flying over the audience, over the trees. He's not even on the course anymore. He's going. He's going to run out of fuel if he doesn't double back." And he's like, at the very last second, he like curls, kicks the engine, final burst, just barely like spins him in like a spirally tornado back towards the center field, just barely edging the corner of the finish line. So that's all a legal move. And he makes it back onto the snow. Yeah, obviously. Because that's the rules, duh.
Yeah, that's the rules. We all know how this game
You gotta cross the finish line. Come on.
Snowboarding. Yeah. Jetboarding, excuse me. Yeah.
He sticks it. As he sticks it, his board breaks in half from the sheer pressure of the jet engine fuel. And he picks up both ends of the board and lifts it to the sky, like crying. He's like, "Yeah!" Music swells, trumpets blare, everyone's excited.
More of those glorious trumpets everywhere. Yes.
His first coach watching at home on the old TV sheds a single tear, and he will be known forever as the jet snow. I gotta pull it together with this last line: the jet snowboarder that burned his own path to victory.
Well,
bring it home.
Oh my God, what a one-liner. Yes.
Roll credits, hit that modern pop song with a slight twist so it fits into the movie.
Oh, I can hear it, dude. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's in my brain. Yep. Dang.
And that's
how glorious.
It's the prompt.
Titus
Incredible.
Really did it.
He really did.
After all those years.
Timmy could never.
Nah.
Yeah, but Titus definitely did.
Is this the same person? Is that what's happening here? Is Timmy like evolving into Titus? Is that what's throughout the years? Like the old people knew him as Timmy, but that time's past, you know. Mm-hmm. That's the old me. I've changed.
This is not the Timmy you grew up with.
No. Who is Timmy? I'm Titus.
From the Baltlands.
Yeah. It's way cooler. I mean, I understand his fame now. Yes.
All right.
Amazing.
I'm ready. Let's ship
beautiful.
Ship it.
It's beautiful. And with that beautiful, glorious trumpet blaring prompt of Dante, we come to the end of our episode. Oh, cue all.
Oh, cue all.
Very sad.
Yeah. Thank you, live audience.
There's got to be a lot. Yeah, thank you, live audience. Yeah. Thank you, live audience of one other person. In fact, yes. If you have any other suggestions for us, any prompts that might reach an even more glorious conclusion, you never know, feel free to send them in. We have a Gmail, in fact. We have a Twitter, which is YRAW podcast.
Yes.
Do we use this?
Listen, I don't know. Listen, in a year from now, I don't know if having a Twitter will age well. We just gotta give us the Gmail is forever.
Yeah, Gmail is the safe and sturdy option here. Yes.
When
in doubt, go to our Gmail and send us a message over there, which is yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Feel free to contact us. We love to hear from you. And there's this one thing that's actually in the title of our podcast. There we go. I'm very smooth today.
So smooth.
that we never really discussed and will perhaps never discuss. But maybe tune in to the next episode to find out why your rivers are wrong.
Why your rivers are wrong.
Do you know? Maybe we should think about it some more. Anyway, until then.
Yeah. Until then.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have any thoughts for topics, prompts, or if you just want to share your thoughts, you can reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Big thank you goes to Martin Skelligans for our intro and outro music, and most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to catch you at our next episode. Have a good one.